Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So I actually have a book review today, yay, because I actually read a book. So for those of you who don't know, I write the kind of books that I want to read, and I'm also a full-time professional editor, so that means that I don't read a whole lot in my free time for fun, because either I'm reading for the sake of editing for my clients who are paying me, or I write the kind of books that I want to read, and therefore I never find any books that I really don't, and therefore I don't find any books that I really do want to read because I've already written exactly what I want because I know myself best. And that's not to say that I'm an amazing author, it's just I know myself, I know exactly what I want to read, and so I just go write it. So it's rare when I find a book that I love, and even more so a book that I love that I read in a full 24-hour period and could not put down. So today we're going to be talking about, and I'll put the cover up on the screen, and I'll actually show you guys on my Kindle because I just could not stop reading this book. Freida McFadden's book called The Inmate. And not that that's really going to help it clear, but I don't even know where to start. This review is not going to have any spoilers, so don't worry. So it's been a while since I've done a book review, but first of all, I don't really read psychological thrillers, mostly because I don't read, but I do watch a ton of crime fiction. I watch a ton of crime shows, a ton of mystery shows, a ton of the greatest mysteries or unknowns in history. Anything to do with crime and mysteries, I love it. I just don't read them, I just watch them. I love Criminal Minds. I love Night Agent is a thriller TV show. Outer Banks is kind of a historical mystery based on treasure hunting. There's several good shows on Netflix like The Unknown or Mysteries of the Universe, things like that, and I love it so much. So I'd like to say that I've gotten fairly decent at kind of figuring out hints and figuring out who did it and stuff like that. Now, I'm not always right, especially Criminal Minds, because they're pretty good at it. So with that in mind, when I read this book, The Inmate, I immediately fell in love with the main character, and I really liked, I'm not going to name characters, but I really liked the apparent main guy character, and I fell in love with him, and I immediately was like, this can't be right. And I was so sure that I was correct in my thinking, especially as the book goes on. There are hints given, there are clues and different hints that are pinpointed throughout the book to really make you rethink the idea of what the crime over and over again. And it helps that this writer, Freida, she did such a genius when she did this. She writes it in the present day, and then some of the chapters go back to the night of the murders that happened. And we kind of like, in those flashback chapters, we are slowly building up to the big event, which was the main character, Brooke, getting choked, suffocated by the person that she thought tried to kill her. And we're just leading up to that. And so that's when I was looking for, I actually got into watching a show called Prison Break. I'm trying to plan my own thriller book series, and I'm planning that, and so I was doing research, and so I decided to try to find a book that was like that, to know if there's even a genre out there for fiction, crime fiction, that deals with people in prison, specifically people in prison who are innocent. And I just started looking up crime fiction, and I found that one, so I started reading the sample to make sure that it was something that I was going to like. Since I'm very picky, I didn't want to buy a book and not read it, you know. And I got to chapter 6 last night, and I was like, I gotta buy it. So I bought it, and so I started reading it more full often today. And I just could not. I just started reading it at like 11:15, and I finished it just now. And it's, 3 a.m. in the morning. So the part of what hooked me was I wanted to get to, in the flashback scenes, I really wanted to get to that moment when the murders happen, where the main character gets almost killed, and I wanted to find out who really did it, because she's so certain it's one person, but then there are hints thrown out there, and I'm like, oh no, this is my theory. And I had this whole theory set up in my head, and I was like, this is it, I'm right, I know I'm right, I have to be right, and if the writer doesn't do it this way, I'm gonna be mad and upset and everything else. And so it was just building the curiosity to wanting to build up to the the murders, basically the murder scene, if you will, was just epic. And then there are other hints thrown around to make you doubt everything, and it was just, and other suspects thrown in there. There was one suspect that wasn't even like a suspect, and I was like, maybe it was this person, and it was like totally random, and that had nothing to do with anything at all. But so then you get to the ending, and again, this review is not going to have any spoilers, so don't worry. But you get to the ending, and you get toward the end, and the twist is thrown in, and I'm like, yep, I'm right. And it presented my theory, and so I got to live my theory, and I was like, this is how the book's gonna end, and it's gonna be great. But I'm like, why are we still so far from the ending? And I was like, there's gotta be something else, right? Because if she ended it here, there's too many chapters left to just wind down the book. So I was like, there's gotta be another twist to it. So then I thought, okay, well, my theory was right, but I think it's actually this other person, which was the one that I had, side character, had nothing to do with anything. I was just so sure it was that person. And the twist is thrown in. I don't even know how to describe what I was like when I was reading that. I was just like, oh my gosh. And I got to admit, it disappointed me because I was in love with a certain character. And then the twist is thrown, and that just got blown out of the water. And then you keep reading during the ending, and they threw something else in there that I did not see coming. This was completely random, but it made so much sense, and it blew me out of the water. And then the twist got flipped on its head, and essentially, moral of the story is I fell for the wrong character in the book, and I'm mad at myself. I'm shooting myself in the foot, but I really fell in love with the wrong character. So a part of me is mad because it did not end the way I wanted it to. But then, so I was, just sulking in my disappointment over the fact that it didn't end the way I wanted it to. And then there's an epilogue. So I'm reading the epilogue, and the ending of this, the epilogue adds an extra layer to it that you're just like, wait, what? And it completely just, I can't even, it screwed with my mind. Like, it's messing with my head, and it's blown my mind, and I don't even know what to do. And that's the reason why I decided to film this review right after I finished the book, because all of these emotions are just so fresh. Like, I am still trying to process, and I wish somebody would read this book so I can talk to them about the ending specifically, because I can't process it, and I need more. It literally sets it up for a sequel that could be like 10 or 15 years from now, and it would be perfect, and I need one so bad. And I've stalked the author, and none of her other books are connected with this one, because she writes a lot of like standalone psychological thrillers, and I see why they're called psychological thrillers, because it psychologically messed with me. Now that I've had my crazy freak out for the day, ultimately I was thinking about giving this book 4 stars, just because the writing, I feel like, and maybe it's because I'm a professional editor, the writing could have been a little more edited better. It could have been a little tighter, but this person seems to be the best. I didn't know Freida McFadden, or I'm sorry, I'm butchering her name. What is her name again? Freida McFadden. She is a best-selling author, and one of the, this book is actually the best-selling in 3 different major thriller categories and stuff. And so she seems like a pretty famous thriller author who can get away with it. Indie authors like me, not so much. But it did bug me at first, these little mistakes, but because of the mystery and the intrigue and the curiosity, I just had to keep reading. My mind, it took me out of editor mode completely, and I just stopped seeing stuff. And that's how you know a book is really, really good, when it takes you out of takes an editor out of their editor mode, because that's really, really hard to do. But I just had to keep reading so fast, because I just had to know what happened next. So I originally was going to give this 4 stars because of the grammar stuff, but the twists and turns were so good. The story was just so gripping that it has to have 5 stars. And I was tempted to give it 4 stars also, because I'm angry because the twist didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. But then the epilogue comes in and just messes with your head. So I have to give this 5 stars. You just can't. As I said, I loved how we go back and forth between the present, when the main chick, Brooke, is 28, and then we go 10 years ago to the night of the party that led to the murders that happened. And there's just enough in each scene to get you just a little closer and a little closer to the event where she gets suffocated. And that's the part you want to get to, because you want to know, did this happen the way that she thinks it happened, or is there something else? Did she miss something? Is she forgetting something? Did she lose part of her memory or have amnesia, or was there something else at play that she didn't know? And it just makes you question so much, and you're just wanting to know if it really played out the way that she thought. And that's where I was thinking that it didn't play out the way that she thought, and I was so adamant. And of course, you know, being a psychological thriller, there's got to be a twist in here somewhere. It can't just be exactly like she thought it was, and I had such high hopes. And so I was a little disappointed that it didn't work out the way that I thought it was, but the ending, the epilogue, I cannot get over that, and I wish I could say that, but I can't, because that's the epic twist that'll leave you guys screwed up in the head like me. And so now I've finished this book. It's so good. Highly recommended. There's a little bit of cussing. Obviously, there's some drinking. There is a scene that is implied that, actually there's two scenes that kind of imply a couple characters have sex, but it blacks out. It politely deals with the subject itself, which one of those scenes is kind of necessary to the story, because part of the story is that she has a kid, and that plays a huge part in the whole book. It plays a huge part in the whole book, you guys. So that cannot be avoided, and that was also part of the night leading up to everything. So it was handled well. It was blacked out. It was very polite. I would not dock any stars from it. It didn't bother me at all, and I'm very sensitive about that sort of stuff. So I would say that this is a very clean book. If you don't like violence, it does have a little bit of violence in it. Again, I'm pretty unfazed when it comes to violence. I'm sensitive to sexual content, but when it comes to violence, nothing really phases me a whole lot. But this was, so if you don't like too much violence, this does have it in there, especially the night of the murder, when the murders actually happen. There's a description of the bodies and some blood and stuff. It's not, I wouldn't consider it too bad, and I would consider it probably 13 and up. But just in case you are sensitive to violence, it does include those things there pertaining to the crime. It's not senseless violence. It does pertain to the story and is important. So I would say it's a very clean book, in my opinion. I think it's very clean. It's very well written. Other than the grammar mistakes, it could have been tighter. But again, famous author. She can get by with it and stuff. Very good book. The excitement, the thrill of the murders that night, that whole situation and sequence was just so intense, and I couldn't put the whole book down, but especially when I was reading those parts, it was like I couldn't read it fast enough to find out what was happening next. And I loved the present day stuff, but I almost found myself really enjoying the flashbacks too, which is weird because I normally don't like teenage stuff anymore. I don't like writing that kind of stuff, and I really don't care to read. That's why I don't like reading YA, is because I don't really care to read teenage age stuff or teenage characters. I like characters that are close to my own age or older, or just a little older. So late 20s, early 30s is usually the age range I like my characters that I'm reading or writing to be in. But yet in this book, I actually really wanted to keep reading the teenager side of things because of how exciting it was, and that's where the mystery was. But there was also hints that you get a chapter in the past, you know, and you think you know kind of what happened that night, and you have a theory, and then something happens in the present and you start questioning things, and it gives you different hints, which I now know are red herrings. But it just, well, actually all of them are still legit. So there were actually, like, I can't spot any red herrings in this book at all, to be honest, because it was all legit. And she really just winds, like, she like wound it all together really well. Like, it's such a good book. Highly recommended. 5 stars. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this book review. It's my first one that I've done for a very, very long time, but it's the first book that I've actually read in a long time, and this is my first book I've read in 2023. So here's to hoping I can at least get 3 books read this year is my goal. So 3 books that are not associated with my books or my clients. So, because I've actually read more than that already, because I edit for full time, but free books, reading on my own for fun. I hope to get 3 at least read this year, so this would be my first one. So again, this was The Inmate by Freida McFadden. She's a best-selling psychological thriller author, and I've looked at some of her other books. Basically, they're all psychological thrillers, although I think she does have some women's fiction, but most of her books are psychological thrillers. So if you did enjoy this book review, please give it a like, and be sure to subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday. And if you guys want to see what other books I have reviewed, click here for the last book review I did. It's been a long time, but this book was also pretty good, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed.